Okay, part two. This is going to be chapter 10, section 3, The Age of Jackson. And we're now to the point of John Quincy Adams and his presidential term. And let's take a look at this. So he's going to be like his father, a one and done president, one term, and then he's finished. He had some really good ideas. And basically, he's going back to that American system with the infrastructure from Clay's idea, and he's going to stick with that, and he's going to extend it. And he had some creative proposals. One was for a publicly funded university that people could go to. So he's high on education. He knows the importance of it. And then he wants also the government to invest in science and exploration. So it's all about education and bettering the country. So they're all good ideas, but there's few of the ideas that are going to actually make their way into action. And he's just he's not a popular individual even as president because that's his thing. He's not in the club. He's not one of the good old boys. Not in the clique. And this is going to really hurt him. And they're always going to refer back to that his enemies are going to refer back to that corrupt bargain that you're sitting in the seat of the president when you shouldn't be. You got it on Clay's coattails. So when politicians in Congress, this is really going to be a popularity thing. When politicians in Congress refuse to act decisively for fear of basically displeasing the voters, he didn't care about pleasing voters. He did not care about popularity. He cared about what was service, what was a matter of service, not the popularity. So an example here, he steadfastly he would refuse to campaign. He didn't believe in campaigning for his second term as president because he didn't believe in a popularity contest. He just thought he would run on his own merit and what he did as a president there in office. So he wouldn't campaign. So that hurt him majorly during the next election. So because it said it's sure a matter of service and not a popularity contest that comes out of his mouth. So he's not about that. He also appeared to the people appeared to be an elitist. That he basically I'm better than you, an elitist, which I don't believe he was. I don't think he was an elitist. I just think he had very high ideas and expectations, and you'll see this throughout his service. And I mean, he does a lot with his service and his time. And so it's not his doesn't have his unpopular unpopularity, which had John Quincy Adams' public dedication to unpopular principles helped assure his defeat in the presidential election. What we're going to get to is 1828. So he just keeps on picking up these unpopular beliefs that everybody else, agrees on, but he doesn't. So he's always on the wrong side of the fence on these arguments and discussions. So, for an example, let's go ahead and look at what he does with the Creeks. So they have a treaty in front of John Quincy to go ahead and sign, and basically to give their land up in Georgia, and he doesn't sign it. He doesn't sign it. He overturns the treaty, and he doesn't want to sign it. So that ticks off the governor there in Georgia, and basically, and here's what he believed in. John Quincy, he basically believed that he had been fraudulently, so not done right, that's fraud, basically to obtain it through, he calls it coercive means. So not a good way of getting land from the Native Americans. So he's delaying history is what he's doing, because we know what Andrew Jackson's going to do. So, and although Adams supported the Creeks, he didn't prevent the removal. Is what we're getting at. He was on the wrong side of the fence, and then they will be removed later on in history. So it's he lost political backing because of that, of his ideas and what he was sticking to. He continued on this course through his entire presidency, and following this principle rather than popularity. He's about principle, and I respect that totally, than popularity. And then he gets defeated and loses his presidency because he's a one and done. This is a neat thing. He goes back into the Senate and serves as in the House of Representatives, which is awesome. Matter of fact, he serves and until he dies. And if you go to Washington D.C. and you look at the old part of the representatives, the Capitol there, if you take a look at the old part, and there's a plate, there's a brass plate there, and a mark where his desk sat, because that's where he died. He passed away right there at his desk at the Senate. So just gave all that he had, I believe, and as a person. So he also one thing he did with he wasn't a huge anti basically opponent of slavery. He didn't like take major proactive things, but he also successfully defended the African Americans who were on trial and for the Amistad incident with that vessel. And so he's up there going against this U.S. Supreme Court and pleading the case of these African American slaves. Really cool movie. I do enjoy that one, and it's got it right on the way it went out there. So that's kind of John Quincy's presidency. It doesn't kick off very good even from the get-go. I wouldn't have done it. John Quincy did. I'm sure he thought about it, and maybe I don't know if he had any regrets or not. But yeah, a man of principles, and I don't know. History didn't go the other way. So, but he just kind of like was a temporary stop of what history was going to be like to come for the Native Americans. Yeah, definitely. So, and that's the politics there of that man. Now we're going to go into a little bit here of the politics of a new era of politics, and that's going to be through Andrew Jackson in his term. And basically we're going to bring in a new era of American politics, and this is suffrage, which is the right to vote, and he's going to really kick on that one. First thing he does, many of the states, when they're getting ready for this election in the 1790s, they dropped the requirement. Remember, it had to be male, white, and own property. They're going to drop this to basically men to own property to be able to participate in voting. So you don't have to own property. So in other words, you just had to be a white male, okay, and then you'd be able to vote. So because this is going to set it up great for Jackson, because he's the common man. Now the common man gets to vote. So I'm not saying it's a popularity contest, but it sure does help to win those votes. So the voting requirements varied slightly from state to state, though. but not too much. However, most of the adult white, males, basically could vote and also hold office. So it comes back to suffrage. And again, suffrage is the right to vote. So that's going on there. So we're going to talk about the common man and the changing of this democracy in Jackson's age. And we're going to talk about that in just a minute. Okay, so you had to be an adult white male and not own land. You didn't have to own land to vote, and we were on that with that suffrage. The West is going to lead this because of the East and West is going to be split. If you take a look at it, the West is going to be farmers, less educated, not as wealthy, basically like a blue-collar, hard-working individual. If you look at the East Coast, it's going to be well-educated, white collars. We talk about that, different kinds of jobs, lawyers, merchants, in trade, and those kinds of individuals. And that's always been the standard. So that's going to go on until we reach Jackson. And that's going to be in 1828. We have this election, what Jackson known as, he's going to go as Old Hickory on this election. Triumphed over what they call an aristocrat, the reclusive and unpopular. Remember we talked about popularity contest with John Quincy. He doesn't like it, so they think he's an elitist. He's the presidential. That's the incumbent. He already has the office, but he's going to lose it to Jackson. Let's take a look at the first 6 presidents of the United States. They're basically from the same kind of mold until Jackson. They're wealthy, they're educated, and they're all from the East. Now, when we get to Jackson, that's not the case. Okay? Basically, Jackson is a self-made man. I definitely believe in that. Jackson is self-made, pulled himself up by his own bootstraps and went on, other than Rachel's influence for her money. But self-made man. He's declaring education here because he wasn't well educated himself early on, and with his lawyer practice, with his law, unnecessary requirement for basically political leadership. And indeed, Jackson did launch the era when politics would be basically desperately trying to show basically how poor they had been, and that was dirt poor. So they'll have the election of 1828, and earlier on in the election. The one previously, when we talked about the corrupt bargain, in that election, Jackson received more votes, right? But no candidate actually had a majority. Now, this is the way it's going to be now. 4 years later, we have the voice. It says the voice of the people were finally heard, because you're looking at the individuals who are not wealthy and rich, who are not educated. Let's say it's this way. Okay, we got the government, and then we got Jackson. Okay, so we have the rich against the poor, right? And this is going to be a social divide. Okay, this is a social division. We went with regional division, okay, which is close to social division, because whatever region you're at, that's what you're going to practice. But now we're going to tear it apart even some more. We're going to have some more division. So we have rich and poor. We have the polite and the vulgar, is what they'll tell you. And we have the educated and the uneducated, all at the same table. Now, when I say at the same table, they all have the same voice. So they're all going to be heard through their suffrage, so through their voting. That's not going to make some people very happy. and it might not even still today, but they're just going to have to live with it. Everybody has that right. So we talk about this now. When he's elected, this is quite an event. Jackson takes it, sweeps it pretty easy, and he opens up literally the White House door, and there's 20,000 people that show up, and it's a party, and Jackson is literally pasted to the wall because everybody's trying to get past him or meet him, and it must have almost suffocated him, I would think. And that's the time that you could get to the president of the United States and shake their hand and meet him. And now they're not, 20,000 people in the White House. I mean, they would freak out today. I mean, they would have a baby. So they have all these well-wishers for the inauguration. And Jackson's got to get them out, because here's what he writes. He wrote on to the White House, followed by a swarm of well-wishers. Invited in. Now look, they got muddy shoes. Now Jackson would do the same thing when he's president. He wouldn't take his boots off. He'd be mud right on, go right through. Probably the major just screaming at him, no, 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 no. No, they wouldn't scream at him, but probably they were pulling their hair out too, saying, I got to clean that up. Please don't walk on it. So they got their boots on, and they got new carpeting, so that's not new anymore. Glassware, we're talking about crockery, all the stuff is smashed. So through this party, and there's just chaos. Generally reigned that day was chaos and madness. And there's some people that wrote some things about that. After a time, Jackson ordered the punch bowls. Okay, which were, they had liquor, and they had to move it outside on the White House lawn just to get the people, out and get them out of the house, because there were so many. And so that crowd the horde just went and followed the punch bowls. So naturally we have critics, individuals who don't like Jackson. They catch on to this. And it was quick to point out that this party at the White House basically began his presidency as the reign of King Mob. So it shows him with a crown on and a scepter. They have a lot of jokes. They did it with all the presidents. I mean, good grief. They did it back then. They're going to do it now. And so he's a military hero. We go over that one. A frontiersman and a populist. So he is very popular. Jackson enchanted the common people. I mean, it's just like honey in your ear. And alarmed. This is going to alarm these political and social economic elitists that are very elite individuals. They're gonna be sweating. So he's a man of the people, and now the government, right? He's going to govern the nation, and America did not, disintegrate into anarchy. No, not that day. So it's not going to just basically tear itself apart just because he's in office now. So that's a little part of Andrew Jackson here coming in. Now, he does have one other thing that I'm going to throw at you before I go, and that's the spoils of victory. He has a spoils system. And there's a saying to this, to the victors goes the spoils. And he's going to be victorious. So, to the victors, so to Jackson goes the spoils. What are the spoils of this? The spoils of war are, you get land and gold and what other resources you get. Here, you're going to have different kind of individuals coming in and asking for jobs, and they're supporters of the Jackson, and at this time. So the spoil system, it says right here, to the practice of rewarding government jobs to loyal supporters of the party that wins the election. And of course, John Quincy would be totally against this and wouldn't put up with it. Jackson allows it and allows it come in. So he does reward his individuals. As a matter of fact, previous presidents did some, 20% of federal office holders, and Jackson really openly defended what he was doing. He claimed putting new people. Now here's a good idea here. Putting new people into government jobs furthered democracy. So that's how he covers the spoils system. It's going to further democracy. So I get to put the people in there that actually pat me on the back, and I pat them back. So it's talking about democracy furthering it. As you could tell, I'm laughing at that one. One of his supporters put it more selfishly when he compared the process to a conquering army after a war, saying to the victors belong the spoils, the loot. And and that's right. I mean, Jackson should have said basically, this is the way, this is what I'm doing, this way it is. But he's a politician at the time, and he's not going to say it or do it. Well, he's going to do it, but he won't say it. And then we're going to read some more later on about the Indian removal in Section 4. So thank you for tuning in to Hoover's History.